Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 62 War of Kings Part 4. Lee Sung-kook was surprised by the system message and muttered, "Another new scenario. It certainly wasn't good timing." Another scenario appeared before we could complete the clear conditions of the existing scenario. I opened up the new scenario as soon as it arrived. Plus. Main scenario number 4, the King's Qualifications. Category, Main. Difficulty, A. Clear conditions, occupy the absolute throne located at Gwangwoman. Time limit, 8 hours. Compensation, 10,000 coins. Failure. Asterisk this scenario can only be challenged by those who have completed the hidden scenario, King's Road. Asterisk the absolute king has absolute commands over all the other kings. Asterisk there are additional special clear conditions for this scenario. Plus. The situation wasn't good. Our group hadn't been able to take the target of the struggle for flags yet. The burden had doubled. I must complete the scenario related to the throne while taking down the tyrant king and occupying Cheongsin Station. The intermediate Dakibi said. "Look at your confused faces. Please don't worry too much. This scenario will proceed slowly." Gwangwoman was still, despite everyone being in a state of agitation. It was natural. The surviving kings knew how important it was to listen to the Dakibi. As you have guessed, the fourth main scenario is to be the only king to sit on the throne. Of course, being a king doesn't mean that everyone can sit on that throne. Only a person who has proved her qualifications can sit there. The intermediate Dakibi said with a bad laugh. Then I will reveal the first qualification. Plus. King's Qualification. 1. The owner of the throne should be braver than anyone else. The absolute throne never wants a weak king. To challenge the throne, you must own at least a black flag. Additional qualifications will be released after a while. Plus. A black flag. It was disgusting from the very beginning. Hoo-hoo, the motive was given. Now make a fun story. The intermediate Dakibi disappeared and Usanga made an anxious expression. If it is a black flag, you need to occupy 20 stations? That's right. Our group had a brown flag. It was a flag that could be obtained after occupying 10 stations. What do we do? In order to create a black flag, we need 10 more stations. If there are vacant stations nearby. This is a condition that appeared because there are no empty stations. Huh? As far as I knew, no king had achieved the black flag at this point. Did you forget? There isn't only one method to change the color of a flag. The achievement value of the flag went up when taking over a station. However, there was a way to get achievement values much faster. It was to take the flag of another representative. Right now, there were a bunch of kings with flags in Gwangwoman. I calmed down the party members. Don't worry. This wasn't unexpected. We will proceed as planned. As planned. I said this, but it wouldn't be easy. There were clouds of war hanging over Gwangwoman. It was a breathless tension just before the storm blew. The sound of weapons being pulled out and the organization of battle lines could be heard. People would soon start moving. Those competing for a promotion would now kill each other with real swords. Those who wanted a wider territory would take each other's flags to occupy more stations. Kill each other and get better items. It was in order to survive. Lee Sung-kook watched the buildings around them and muttered in a surreal tone. It is scary. Is this really South Korea? It is South Korea. It is still South Korea. Representative Nim, aren't you scared? I'm afraid. It wasn't a lie. I was obviously scared. To be honest, I often felt that way. Even if I read Ways of Survival, I was still a regular office worker. I didn't express it, but I often wondered if I could survive. Of course, my worries didn't last long. It was because it was useless to think about it. It was the same in any world. Kim Dokja, who worked at Minosoft, was now Kim Dokja who lived in the world of Ways of Survival. Death would come whether I wanted it to or not. The most important thing was, at least I feel like I am living right now. The exclusive skill, Fourth Wall, is activated. I suddenly turned around and saw Lee Sungkook looking at me with reverent eyes. When I look at Representative Nim. Attack! Someone's shout was heard before Lee Sungkook's words were over. 300 meters away, there was a king who started marching north. He was a king with a brown flag like me. I couldn't see his face, because he was too far away, but he was probably the king of a small district. At almost the same time, the warlords hiding in Gwangwaman started to appear. They were each armed with excellent self-defense equipment. The most prominent one was a man wearing a kilt in splendid colors. I could tell who he was without looking. Our target, the Tyrant King and the rule of Dobonggu and Songbukgu. The vibe he gave off was new. The Tyrant King, who had the largest forces among Seoul's 7 kings. Now that he moved, the first apostle and the kings of the 3 kingdoms would act. Maybe most of them will go after the 4-in demonic beheading sword. In fact, the direction of the king's march was the Northern Palace Museum where the 4-in demonic beheading sword was located. I didn't see him, but the plagiarist would also be moving to that side. Some forces ignored any damage and were running towards the museum. It was understandable. Since the qualifications of the absolute king wasn't clear yet, they thought it would be more advantageous to obtain a good item. If the item was the 4-in demonic beheading sword, they could fill in the lacking achievement points of their flag at once. Lee Sungkook asked anxiously, "Shouldn't we go? The 4-in demonic beheading sword is a pretty good item. We will just be defeated if we go." We didn't have a lot of people. Moreover, there were many high-level sponsors among them. Go to the west. I moved while leading the party. All the kings were heading for the Northern Palace Museum, so the west was relatively lacking. It was the historic Gwangwaman, so there were museums all over the place. Praseum, Korean Financial History Museum, Korean National Police Heritage Museum. Yusenga asked, "We aren't going to these places? We should avoid the modern and contemporary exhibits. An old relic was better." Of course, the relic simply being old wasn't enough. The hoe used by farmers in the Iron Age was also such an item, but it was only F grade. The important thing was that it have a relationship with a famous person or a narrative. Let's go here. The place we stopped at was the Seoul History Museum facing Gyeongui Palace. A light flashed in Yusenga's eyes. "What are we looking for here?" "We must find the Gampyeongui. It is a relic of the Joseon dynasty that resembles a disc, but I don't know what floor it is on. Gampyeongui is an astronomical observation device. Image will be provided below." "Okay, I will try and find it. We have to find it quickly, so let's scatter. Gil-young, you move with Sanga Nuna. And Lee Sungkook SSI." As I was speaking, something sharp flew from behind me. I reflexively crouched down, pulling the party members with me. The exterior wall of the building was pierced by an arrow. There was a trace of magic power on the shaft. I got goosebumps. Strong magic arrow. This person had learnt the archery skill properly. Who was it? The unexpected ambush complicated my thoughts. Was there someone who read the movements of my party? "Everybody go inside. Quickly." Several more arrows flew. Blade of Faith is activated. I swung my sword and struck the flying arrows. Fortunately, the amount of magic power wasn't high, so they weren't difficult to block. The problem was the number. One arrow flew out and pierced my thigh. I quickly retreated and hid behind cover. Ha ha ha. Where is the novice king wandering to? A voice echoed through the area. A group of men armed with bows and swords appeared 500 meters away. Their flag couldn't be seen. In other words, they sent out a detached force. Some kings were smarter than I thought. Was he going to eat up items while taking away the flags of the smaller kings? The exclusive skill, character list is activated. I used a skill on a person in the lead. Plus. Character information, name, Chuan-jin. Age, 33 years old. Constellation support, the last hero of Wangsanbeil. Private attribute, minor actor, general. Exclusive skills, weapons training LV4, acting LV1, weak investigation LV1. Stigma, beach kendo LV4, prepared to fight to the death for the country LV2, detached force management LV3. Overall stats, physique LV19, strength LV19, agility LV21, magic power LV15. Overall evaluation, it is a case where even a nobody can grow if he meets an excellent sponsor. Due to the high degree of sympathy with the sponsor, the strength of his stigmas is significant. Plus. Damn, a tiger had come. I didn't expect to meet Wangsanbeil's master here. Those with actor attributes tended to cling to these types of constellations. If you know honor as a king, surrender your flag. Then your group members won't lose their lives. The poor dramatic tone told me why he was only a minor actor. The last hero of Wangsanbeil was attached to such a person. It seemed that bad luck with partners applied even to constellations. But this was difficult. The level of the stigmas beach kendo and detached force management was too high. Considering the number of people, it would be hard to handle all of them without raising my overall stats. Coins possessed, 68, 150C. Should I use my coins here? However, the difficulty of the last phase of the fourth scenario would increase sharply if I used coins to raise my overall stats here. It would disturb my whole plan. If I closed my eyes and used around 20,000 coins. Isn't it embarrassing for you to persecute the king of a weak nation using the name of the three kingdoms? I looked around as I heard a voice and saw a familiar person approaching. The incarnation of Gaibik, Chuan-jin, made a fierce expression. What is the queen doing here? Your crude tone is just as expected for the master of a ruined kingdom. The woman shot back with a smug expression. King of beauty, Min Jaiwen. Why did this woman appear here? Surely she hadn't followed me? No. There was no way. Min Jaiwen's eyes glanced at me. The character, Min Jaiwen, shows a weak liking towards you. Really? Shut up. The cowardly Scylla blood now claims to be rule of the three kingdoms? I won't recognize a girl like you as a king. Chu Wangan's roar of anger burst from his body. He might be a minor actor without much skills, but his voice was very loud. By the way, it was interesting. Gaibik and Queen Jinseong were born in different eras, but they could face each other like this after becoming constellations. I asked Min Jaiwen, why are you helping me? Scylla doesn't ignore weak countries. It is Scylla who destroyed Gaia. Did you also have a first-grade degree in Korean history? Any high school graduate would know this much. Min Jaiwen's expression became slightly gloomy. I don't know, because I didn't go to high school. It was natural. Min Jaiwen had been an actor since her teens. She became an actress at an early age and learned things other than history. Your words are correct. I can't obtain people with money. I'm repaying the debt caused by my rudeness. That's it. I knew Min Jaiwen's history as an actress and could feel the sincerity in her words. It was still surprising. She was an incarnation with a high pride, so I didn't think she would bow before me like this. Daibik's incarnation laughed at our conversation. A king is swayed by personal matters? That's why a chick like you, Min Jaiwan's captain, came forward on behalf of the Warang. Rude. How can a man like you be the king of a country? Daibik's eyes were drawn to the Warang. Warang. Very interesting. Did you sign with that constellation? The Warang captain turned red at the words. It reminded me that the Warang captain's sponsor was Guanchang. Do you want your neck to be cut like your sponsor? In the Battle of Wangsanbil, Guanchang died from Daibik cutting his throat. Shut up. Thank you for coming to help, but the relationship between constellations was the worst. This was particularly bad due to their high level of sympathy. There was a hierarchy among the constellations due to the history of their lives. A person couldn't go against their king, and the enemy was determined according to historical records. For example, Kurushima Michifusa of Japan could never beat the Duke of Loyalty and Warfare. It was just like how Guanchang couldn't win against Daibik. Min Jaiwan also knew this and didn't look happy. I spoke first. Just defeat the army. Or we can't win. Beech's army had slightly more military force. Daibik was a military commander. The more people he led, the stronger his power. Guanchang was no match for him. Then Yu Senga's voice was heard. Doc Jessi. I've found it. I looked back and found Yu Senga running with a small disc. She found it already? The Gampiongui. The relic resembling a wall clock glowed in Yu Senga's hands. At this moment, I had an idea. I looked at Gampiongui, then Min Jaiwan and the incarnation of Guanchang. Then I made a decision. Perhaps I could win this without using coins? Attack. The character Chu Wanjin has used the stigma detached force LV3. The Warang kept falling under the hands of the Beech forces. Min Jaiwan looked towards me with a desperate expression and I said, I think we can win. Huh? We will recreate the Battle of Wangsanbil. Many people knew this, but Wangsanbil was a battle that Silla won. Chapter 63. War of Kings. Part 5. Min Jaiwan was surprised by my words. Battle of Wangsanbil? Yes, Silla originally won the Battle of Wangsanbil. This is according to history. Chu Wangan's sword ran through a Warang member. Obviously, Silla would win if it was like history. If it was like history. But before I could speak, the captain of Warang came forward and shouted, Don't retreat. There is no stepping back in a battle. At the same time, the Warang pulled out their weapons. No. Victory. Loyally serve the king. Serve. This bastard? All of the Warang of Silla are subjected to the effect of Mundane World 5 Commandments LV2. Ha ha ha, you are pushing them. Daibik's incarnation, Chu Wanjin cried out. Warang's captain came running towards him with a spear. He was following his damn sponsor. The character Chu Wanjin has used the stigma Beech Kendo LV3. Kyuk. The body of the Warang captain flew through the air after being hit by a big sword. I shouted towards Min Jaiwan. Tell them to set up the formations. Take your formations. Hurry. Character Min Jaiwan has activated Military Command LV2. The army has lost their sense of reason. The skill activation is cancelled. Set up the formation. Min Jaiwan screamed again, but the Warang were already inspired by Mundane World 5 Commandments and didn't listen to her order. In the first place, they were loyal to the beauty of Queen Jinseong, not her charisma. I heard a sound. Then Li Gilyang landed next to me from where he broke through the window of the museum's second floor. Hyung, should I call Titano? Li Gilyang's eyes shone as he prepared to use diverse communication. No, it is okay. It would be helpful if Li Giliang could call the 6th grade insect king like last time, but then he would be unconscious for 2 days. High-grade monsters were difficult to control and could also sweep away allies. In any case, Li Giliang was my hidden card. I had to save him until the beginning of the war with the kings. Quack. The warring in front of us were knocked out. On the other hand, there wasn't a single dead beach person. I reached out to Yusanga, who ran to me. Yusanga SSI, the relic. Yusanga handed me the Gampiongui. The Gampiongui. Everyone was distracted by the 4-ing demonic beheading sword, but in fact, the Gampiongui was an essential item for the 4th scenario. The 4-ing demonic beheading sword had no meaning if this item didn't exist. Kuhik. The captain of Warang was a wreck as he was hit by Chu Wanjin again. It wouldn't be strange if he died in one more blow. The constellation Warang knows no retreat is in a hurry. The constellation last hero of Wangsanbil is happy. The constellation Lady of the Brocade Sleep is irritated. The momentum of the beach army grew while Scylla's morale broke down. It felt like the spirit of Gaibik was flowing from Chu Wangin's body. Destroy the damn Scylla. The more that the constellations were in a situation similar to the history that they lived, the greater the coordination with their incarnation and the stronger the power of the stigma. In addition, the encounter with related constellations. It was time for the stage to be created. What? People screamed with surprise. Sparks filled the surrounding space and the scene changed. Seoul's Gwanghwamun was transformed into a rugged mountain wilderness. Stage transformation. It was a phenomenon that occurred when the coordination was high between incarnations with historical correlations. Space transformation summoned the spacetime that the constellations had fought in. Of course, the space wasn't really changed. It was close to an augmented reality. The problem was that this wasn't the case for the people who summoned the stage. Ha 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 ha. I missed you, Wangsanbil. Chu Wanjin achieved a considerable level of coordination with his sponsor and shouted. Now he seemed to completely believe he was Gaibik. Gaibik was in a hurry. If a constellation did something like this in the early scenarios, it was likely they would receive a sanction from the Bureau. However, Gaibik was less likely to be affected than the low-level constellations. Yuyuwa. The frightened Warang started to step back. Li Sungkuk muttered, he isn't one of the 7 kings, but he has such power. Does this make sense? It is possible because Gaibik is the protagonist of this stage. Chu Wanjin was like a mad monster as he ran around. Once stage transformation occurred and coordination with the sponsor increased, the incarnation's strength would multiply. I looked at the trembling Min Jaiwan and opened my mouth. I have 2 ways. One is to let the incarnation of Guancheng die. What do you mean? Originally, the Battle of Wangsanbil was a battlefield that Shilla won, thanks to Guancheng's sacrifice. One half of the battle was complete if he died. As soon as stage transformation began, this has become the battlefield of history. If the incarnation of Guancheng dies, the morale of the Silla troops will rise due to their anger. This is recorded in history. I didn't listen to Min Jaiwan's answer. The second way is to change history. I looked down at the Gampiongui in my hands. Gampiongui, an astronomical observation device produced by Joseon in the 17th century. Min Jaiwan felt uneasy and asked, what will happen if it fails? Your country will perish. Then of course it will be the first option. This was truly Queen Jinseong. She was considered an incompetent ruler for a reason. I didn't mean to give you a choice. I will do the second method. Then why did you mention it? I gave you a chance. You are not what Silla needs right now. I manipulated the 2 discs that made up the Gampiongui. The 2 discs were called the Sky Disc and the Earth Disc, respectively. The top was the Earth Disc and the bottom was the Sky Disc. There was a simple definition for Gampiangui in ways of survival. The Gampiangui is an item that can find the constellations in heaven. As I slowly turned the Earth disk, the constellations engraved on the sky disk started to burn brightly. Gampiangui's special option Echo of the Stars has been activated. Echo of the Stars allows you to ask for the help of a constellation. The constellation can refuse your request, and the number of times Gampiangui can be used is reduced when the constellation responds to the request. There were 7 constellations left on the sky disk. In other words, I can use it 7 more times in the future. It would have been good if there were more constellations left on the relic. Well, it couldn't be helped. Lee Sungkook seemed to have noticed something and asked, "Are you going to get help from a constellation with that?" Not all the constellations are available, but there are some great people. Lee Sungkook was filled with admiration at my answer. He belatedly found out the true value of this item. That's it. Lee Sungkook cried out excitedly, "How about calling Xiangyu or Lubu? If you call them, you can easily deal with Gaibeek. I have to know the modifier of the constellation." In the world of ways of survival, the modifier was like the constellation's spacetime coordinates. The modifiers were like the X and Y axis coordinate system in the star stream. Then. Lee Sungkook made a sad expression. He thought that I didn't know the modifiers of Lubu and Xiangyu. But that was an illusion. There was no one in the world who knew as many constellation modifiers as me. I'll call a constellation. The great constellations hear your voice flowing through the stars. Of course, the constellation I was calling wasn't Lubu or Xiangyu. There was no guarantee they would respond to this request, and there was someone more fitting for this battlefield. I stared at the stars in the sky. I faced the numerous stars and opened my mouth. I want to call warring leader King Hummu the Great. The star navigation has begun. A part of the sky darkened and a shadow fell to the ground. The battle between Scylla and Beak stopped. What nonsense are you saying? Chu Wanjin sensed something suspicious and started running towards me. Representative Nim, we will stop them. Lee Sungkook pulled out a sword. I didn't know how long the hypnotist would be able to endure, but I should have some time. After a while, one of the stars in the sky shone brightly. He finally appeared. The constellation King Hummu the Great is looking at you. General. The constellation King Hummu the Great is listening to you. There are people here who need your help. I am calling you because your people are dying. The constellation King Hummu the Great is silent at your words. King Hummu the Great. He wasn't royalty, but he was the only person who was given a posthumous name of a king of Scylla. He probably wouldn't reject my request. It was because Wangsanbil was his battlefield. But something unexpected happened. The constellation King Hummu the Great doesn't want to be involved in the history of modern life. The constellation King Hummu the Great will reject your offer. What? The constellation was about to fade away when Yusenga interrupted. General, please listen to my words. The smart Yusenga noticed who King Hummu the Great was. The constellation King Hummu the Great is looking back. I'm well aware of General's story. The Battle of Wangsanbil, the Siege of Pyongyang. I've read all about it in the records. Yusenga took a deep breath before starting to talk. I understand that you want to respect the past and history. But General, some histories don't end after they are recorded. Yusenga's voice was clear and straightforward. Don't you regret it? The battlefield where the young Warang are sacrificed and countless people are buried. Have you already forgotten? The constellation King Hummu the Great is listening to Incarnation Yusenga's story. History won't change. The soldiers on the field won't be comforted and the lives of the young Warang won't return. But General, the history here hasn't ended yet. If you come here, at least you can change the history in this place. I had forgotten how good a talker Yu Senga was. During her early days, she was the queen of PT at Mino Soft. General. Your battle of Wangsanbeil is over, but we are still at Wangsanbeil. The constellation King Hunmu the Great has silently closed his eyes. There were such moments in life. I knew what would happen from now on, even if no one said anything. The constellation King Hunmu the Great has responded to your request. One of the constellations on Gampyeongwi disappeared and a light from the star in the sky shone on me. I smiled at the nervous Yu Senga. Well done, Yu Senga SSI. You have temporarily received the protection of constellation King Hunmu the Great. The muscles in my body twitched like they were surprised. My heart pumped and light and darkness crossed several times in my head. Something was being constructed inside me. This is just an old man's reminiscence of the past. This was the mantra of the constellation. Just listening made my existence at stake. Please, lend me your voice for a while. I nodded while opening my eyes. Everyone on the field of Wangsanbeil was looking at me. The incarnation of Gaibik, Chu Wanjin, was astonished. That person. The spirit of a constellation was felt despite him not descending directly. This was the size of the existences called constellations. It has been a while, Gaibik. There was a strange depth in my voice. In the distance, the incarnation of Guanchang staggered. Warang Guanchang, there is no need to pay respect to me. G General. King Hunmu the Great was watching the world through me. He looked at Guanchang, Gaibik, and the broken soul. I was also watching the world through King Hunmu the Great. The sunlight covered the plains of Huangshan. It is funny. Why is it that all of you have gathered here again? Chu Wanjin laughed madly at these words. It was a laugh filled with deep-seated resentment. At this moment, he really was Gaibik. Don't you know? It was to meet you again on this field. The character Chu Wanjin has used the stigma Beach Kendo LV4. Chu Wangin's sword filled with power and moved. Originally, it was an attack that I wouldn't have been able to avoid or block. But I avoided the attack without much difficulty. Gaibik, why are you doing this to your incarnation? Have you forgotten the constraints of plausibility? You will destroy your incarnation. It was as he said. Gaibik was acting unreasonably. I also wondered this as a reader of Ways of Survival. Kim Yeshin. You must have heard nothing about this world. What do you mean? It doesn't matter. My wish was achieved the moment I met you. I'll have no regrets even if I die now. The incarnation of Gaibik cried out. I carry on Beek's legacy of Bio, Gaibik of Wangsanbeil. I will settle my lifelong regret here. King Hunmu the Great watched Gaibik's incarnation with sad eyes and opened his mouth through me. I am the 15th captain of Warang, Kim Yeshin. King Hunmu the Great, Warang leader, Kim Yeshin. I will comfort the soul of the unfortunate constellation and correct the history of modern humans. The man who led the battle of Wangsanbeil to victory sent me his will. I moved my right hand. A bluish glow grew from the hilt. The sword of the warring leader is now on the battlefield. The power of the star-relic blue dragon sword is temporarily stored in unbroken faith. The blade of the blue dragon sword soared high into the sky of Huangshan. All of Huangshan seemed to scream. Enormous magic power escaped and a large crack appeared in the earth, centered around me. Dragon Flower Tree Unit, come to this place right now. The stigma Gather the Warring is activated. Something was happening in the crack. The forgotten ghosts buried in the eternal history. There were no names left, but they were Warang who once lived on this land and who fought only for honor. Ku. The Dragon Flower Tree, Kim Yeshin's elite unit, showed up from the pages of history.